Welcome to Confessions by Banana Ketchup. I'm creeped out by my new house. Well, I really didn't think I'd be posting here. I just like to read the stuff. What's been happening seems minor compared to some of the things I've been seeing, but nonetheless, I kinda wanted advice before it ever gets to that point. So me and my girlfriend of almost 4 years finally moved into our new house, with no real issues aside from the common stress with being a young teenager moving out on their own. After a few weeks, everything was nice, we settled in well, but we started hearing a lot of creaks and moans at night, a little more than we have been, and kept going on late night walks thinking someone broke into the house, as I'm sure you expect nothing, not a thing. We just chalked it up to the house being old and adjusting to us moving in. Well, fast forward about 2 months and we started hearing super loud bangs. More precisely, I was at first, but every time I did, it was me being woken up to the bang. So my girlfriend insisted it was happening in my dream and waking me up. That was till it started waking her up as well. This wasn't super common, but it's slowly increasing and I never ever can find a source. Nothing knocked over or out of place. The cherry on the top here is the suicide in the detached garage we were not informed of before moving in. I commonly invite my brother and his SO over to play games and drinking on the weekends, and my brother's SO found out one of her old high school friends lived nearby, so she went to visit. According to the high school friend, she knew the girl who lived here back in 2019, and she ended up shooting herself in the garage. My brother's SO insisted we get the house saged, but I'm really not into all that stuff. It just feels like fake mumbo jumbo to me, but then again, all of this does. So she had her friends sage the place, but it only seems to have increased. My brother and his SO even heard the bangs when they were over one weekend. I'm not really sure what to do. Edit. I completely forgot to mention I've started having super bad nightmares as I've begun to live there as well. Thank you, Archaneoses, the author. I think I was possessed by an Ouija Board Spirit. I have never liked Ouija boards, they make me wildly uncomfortable and so I've made sure to avoid them until just recently. Call it lockdown boredom that led to hours spent on YouTube and Netflix watching horror games and shows. It sucked me in and I ordered one. It was just a cheap one from Amazon, made of cheap wood that felt like plastic. It wasn't much to look at and so I was skeptical of it, even though it made me feel weird. I left it in its box for days, but kept staring at it. I was always aware of its presence, no matter where I put it. I felt like it was calling to me, so I took it out of the box. I wasn't sure if I could even use an Ouija board on my own, but in the middle of a global pandemic, I couldn't ask my friends, but I asked my best friend to sit on a video chat with me while I did it. We had been talking on Zoom a lot at that point as it was a big trend and I couldn't see her in person. Her name is Alice and she still doesn't believe in it and I kind of felt like I was wasting her time, but I managed to convince her to watch me. I lit a bunch of smelly candles. I regularly light incense and scented candles to calm me down in anxious moments, so I chose my favorite scents, thinking that they would help keep me calm and grounded. I even lifted the mirror off the wall and turned it round and drew the blind shut. I didn't like reflective surfaces. The only surface I had left was on my laptop, but the light on the screen was turned right down, so it didn't blind me and I couldn't make any obvious reflections. I specifically remember Alice saying that I was going to get scared and then would be up all night with the lights on. I laughed nervously, but she was probably right. So I sat on my bedroom floor with only candles and my laptop for light. I out the board on the floor. It was an awkward position to be in and my back hurt from having to lean forward for too long. I'm not in the best physical shape and lockdown had done nothing to help that. It seemed to get really cold really quickly. I soon realized that I didn't actually know what to do or say and Alice said to just put the tips of my fingers on the planchette and ask a question. I didn't know what to say, so I just asked the empty air if there was anything there and nothing happened. I was grateful. Once I was sat on the floor doing it, I really didn't want anything of note to happen at all. Alice piped up that I should specifically ask if any spirits were there that would like to talk to me, so I did. And I was certain I felt the planchette pull underneath my fingers, but in panic I pushed it down hard into the board so it couldn't move. I really didn't want it to. I got full body goosebumps and felt so cold. My fingers were shaking. It didn't pull for very long and I took my fingers off to rub my goosebumps on my forearms. I forgot that you weren't supposed to take your fingers off it without saying goodbye and the goosebumps only got worse when I realized. So I said to Alice that it actually wasn't a good idea to do alone and she asked me if I was scared. I was. I can't even remember the reason I ever thought it was a good idea in the first place. I didn't say goodbye, just shoved the board back in its box and turned the lights on. I didn't blow out the candles right away because the incense would take at least another 20 minutes to burn out, so I left them on the floor and moved to my bed to talk to Alice some more. I didn't put the mirror back. It took a while to fall asleep that night. I watched one of my favorite streamers until the early hours in the morning. I must have finally fallen asleep around 2 a.m., which is really late for me because I'm not a night person. I woke up after a few hours to loud banging. It felt close by, but I could have been certain if I dreamed it or not. And then at 7 a.m.ish, I was woken up by someone saying my name. It felt like it was right next to me, right by my ear. I sat up and looked at the Ouija box on the floor. I decided to throw it away. I really didn't want to mess with it and had been stupid to even buy one in the first place. So I chucked some clothes on, picked up the box and chucked it in the outside bin. The rubbish wasn't due to be collected for a few days, but it would be fine outside. At least it wasn't in my house. Nothing of note happened for the rest of the day, or at least nothing that I thought was paranormal. But I did feel watched. I can't put that down to ghosts or demons though, and thought it was probably just me feeling paranoid. I kept feeling as though something was stood right behind me and I wouldn't be able to turn around. I wore my hood up and it did give me some comfort, but not a lot. This was until the nightmares started. They were really violent, and at one point I was chased through darkness. The first time I woke up from one of these nightmares, I had nasty bruises on my legs. The next time I woke up sweating, and after that I really wanted to get out. But it was at a really unfortunate time in the world, so I couldn't just go to stay with my family or friends. I was isolated at home. I called a doctor and asked for them to increase my dosage of citalopram, antidepressants, but he recommended telephone therapy instead. Therapy isn't really my scene. I don't enjoy it, and it usually just makes me feel worse, so I declined and decided to try and tackle the nightmares by myself. I did a simple Google search and bought some lavender pillow mist to spray on my pillow before I sleep, but it took a couple of days to arrive due to the postal and courier delays. It was the third dream that really bothered me. I dreamt that a dark cloud was hovering over my sleeping body, trying to push its way inside, and the next day I woke up with a nasty head cold without having been anywhere for days. I lied on my sofa for most of the day, watching television, and nothing of real note was happening around the house. There weren't any paranormal noises or things, it all felt internal. Now, I know a lot of people who read this will put it down to mental health issues, and yes, I do suffer with those, and it was a really strange time in the world. I started losing time, like hours would go by in what felt like mere minutes, and I would later find messages on my phone that I'd sent to people that I cannot remember sending. Some were really strange things, and quite rude, and some of my mates stopped talking to me. Alice said that there was one time we spoke on the phone that she thought I didn't sound myself, like my voice was different. I still don't remember any of this. And then to top it off, my cold would not budge. I decided to do a postal test for COVID-19 just to be sure, but that came back negative. It was just a really strange couple of days. I stopped showering and my hygiene really suffered, and I'm really embarrassed to admit that I wet the bed several times. I didn't relate any of this with the Ouija board. I just thought I was suffering from depression. That was until I found the board that had been taken away by the bin man days ago on my bedroom floor. It was just sat there, unboxed, in the middle of the room. I called my mom in panic and she shouted at me for having been so stupid as to mess with the unknown anyway. Like seriously, what did I expect to happen? It was only then, after all of this, that I properly looked into Ouija board and realized my fatal errors. I bought a cheap board online, I took my hands off the planchette, I didn't say goodbye, and possibly worst of all, I threw it in the bin. I was physically sick. My mom decided to drive round to see me. She brought supplies and food, but didn't come in. She looked horrified when she saw me and told me to call the doctor immediately. She asked me if I knew how sick I looked, and I realized I didn't. I hadn't turned my mirror back around, and I don't have any others anywhere in my house. So after she reluctantly left, I went upstairs and turned my mirror around. I was terrified to see my own face. I had huge dark bags under my eyes were bloodshot, and my hair was a mess. I hadn't washed in days, so I must have smelled putrid. My skin was pale and blotchy, and my neck had bruises like I'd been held down and choked. I tried to get in the shower straight away, but the water was freezing, I couldn't stay in there long. I brushed my teeth and combed the knots out of my hair. I decided to speak to a psychic medium online on a pay-by-minute website. Straight away, she sensed a darkness and a black figure and advised me to sage my house, so I did, and it seemed to keep whatever it was at bay. My nightmares slowly reduced in frequency, and I was sleeping a lot better. My cold symptoms all but disappeared. I had listed the Ouija board for sale online and had a few inquiries, but no one had bought it for weeks, and to be honest, I didn't know if I should pass it on to someone else or what to do with it really. But eventually, a bloke came and took it, and I didn't see it again. It's been a few months now, and some weird things still happen in the house. There's a lot more sounds that I can't always explain, and an eerie feeling sometimes. Things go missing and then turn up in places that I know they weren't. The lights seem to be having a party and randomly turn on and off, but I suppose it's not as bad as it could have been with the mistakes I made. Thank you, hannahgoes, the author. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you already haven't, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new episodes. See you again soon, and until then, please be safe.